Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Offstage with the New York Philharmonic at Barnes & Noble. I'm Jeff Spurgeon from WQXR Radio, and our guest this particular episode is a bassist from the New York Philharmonic. We've normally talked to guest artists in all but one of these programs before. Never anybody from the rank and file of the orchestra before, so it's terrific to get a little bit deeper into the heart of the Philharmonic. So would you please welcome, from the bass section, David Grossman. And David, this is actually your second appearance on this series because you were with us at one of the very first Offstage with the New York Philharmonic at Barnes & Noble events with Joseph Alessi, the principal trombone, and Wycliffe Gordon.
Correct.
And so David came and supported that evening, which was terrific too, and a little bit of an experience of the hybrid world of classical music and jazz, which David straddles so beautifully with the New York Philharmonic. You and two fantastic musicians just played some wonderful jazz here with us. When you play jazz as a classical musician, do you switch heads? Do you have to take off the classical head and put on the jazz head?
Definitely not. See, it's I don't think of myself as a classical musician or a jazz musician. I'm just a musician. You know, Duke Ellington once said there are only two kinds of music. There's good music and bad music. So I like the good music. And, you know, I recognize that, of course, I play classical music and I play jazz, but, you know, when I'm in the orchestra, I can appreciate playing classical music on many levels. And often I'll hear something, I'll be inspired by maybe a harmonic movement or orchestration that will inform my jazz playing and vice versa. So I don't really separate those heads.
But the techniques are different, and
Yes.
and the understanding and the place, sort of priority of rhythm is a little bit different.
Very different, yeah.
Did you have any struggle in learning that? And how did that process happen?
I hope I didn't have a struggle. I mean, you know, of course I had to learn, but I started playing piano, was my first instrument when I was 7, and started playing classical piano, and then jazz piano when I started studying the bass when I was 12. And then as soon as I was moderately proficient on the bass, you know, my jazz knowledge from the piano transferred to the bass. And I grew up in a musical family with music always, and it always came very naturally. You know, I liked to compose when I was very young, so probably that drew me to playing jazz too, and the improvisatory side of music.
I'm not going to let go of this just yet,
Okay.
because there aren't that many musicians who do both, who play both jazz and classical music, and are successful, proficient, conversational in both of those modes. So let me ask it this way. What are the differences between playing classical music and jazz?
That's a good question. I would say the main difference is that in classical music, you hinted at this, in classical music, you know, the rhythm can follow the melody. But in jazz, the melody always follows the rhythm. It's always the pulse is there, 100%. So that's a very basic difference. Of course, classical music is through composed, you know, and jazz, there's much more improvisation. But again, beyond the obvious differences and genres and style, I try to see, it's not that I try to, I can't but help to see the connection. Maybe just like if you speak Spanish and someone's speaking Italian, you can recognize, oh yeah, I can kind of, you know, it's not, you're not trying to speak Italian or understand Italian, but it's just there. So it's not a shift I'm conscious of. I'm just you know, I'm always constantly inspired in the orchestra, and I'm constantly inspired going to jazz clubs or playing with great musicians like we just had here.
What is the day-to-day life of a musician in the New York Philharmonic? Rehearsals, schedules, repertoire, how do you find out about all of it?
Well, it's all planned in advance, which can make it easier. We have our schedules a year in advance, just about. And when I first joined, that was very challenging because, you know, coming from school where, you know, we played maybe 2 or 3 orchestra concerts a year, all of a sudden, every week is new music, new repertoire. So I remember my first couple years, the feeling of, okay, great, just by the time I really felt like I owned it, you know, we were on to the next music or next week's repertoire. At this point, again, it's hard to imagine I've been in the orchestra 10 years, but I've played a lot of the music before. I'm used to the pace of it. But that can be that can take some adjusting as to that schedule.
Every year it gets easier, because every year you repeat some repertoire. You see some new things.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
It must have been a tremendous adjustment for you to come from school and then leap into the orchestra. What were some of the challenges in those first couple of years of all of a sudden you're one of the kids in the hall over at Juilliard, and then suddenly you're in the section?
How much time do you have? No, I have to acknowledge someone in the room without whom I wouldn't be certainly the bass player and musician I am, the person I am. She's a teacher of mine, a mentor, and constant inspiration, and was a huge support when I joined the orchestra. I want to acknowledge Miss Orrin O'Brien. Please, could you stand up? She's my rock, as a teacher and in the section, So, what was the question again? she made everything, She really was very supportive for me.
I guess I was curious about what it felt like to suddenly join this esteemed organization. You were the youngest, but you were also one of the team.
Yeah.
Support, challenges that you got from your fellow musicians in the orchestra.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It wasn't easy. I didn't have a smooth transition, so I learned a lot. I maybe beyond my years, but I'm here to I'm still here, still in the orchestra, thanks to great colleagues and great music, and I focus on the music. And it's like a village. There are many different people in the orchestra. Not all are going to be your friends, but we're connected by our love of music, and that's what brings us together.